Hey, welcome back to the Minioncast, episode 4B, aka the Royal Order's launch event, part 2. And as promised, I was going to talk about Mitsuko Yamato. She is the central character in Royal Orders. And let me lay the suicide arc out a little bit for you. Basically, this follows on from the Children of Amargosa, the whole Amargosa trilogy, actually, which also includes Second Wave and Storming Amargosa. Mitsuko is a late entrance into the collective group now known as Children of Amargosa. And what I decided to do was I got a lot of requests for a suicide novel, and I thought, how about a suicide trilogy? And then it dawned on me, people are going to wonder also what happened to the quote-unquote meddling kids as adults. So there will be 3 suicide novels. Suicide Run was the first one. Then in between, I have 3 novels focusing on each of the Children of Amargosa. JT was the first in Checkmate, which is the second book. This being the third book is Mitsuko's turn, and the next one will feature Eric Iwano playing Bond, James Bond, in space. Anyway, and then there will be another suicide novel called Suicide Gambit, followed by Ellie Nardino on a Wild West journey into other space out on the fringe. Kind of like Eric does in his, but I think Eric's having a little more fun. He goes to a tropical paradise. She basically ends up in a mine fighting cowboys. It'll make sense when it comes out. Duffy finds a Gelt girlfriend who has cracked a long-standing FTL mystery, and then we get to see Davor Andraste's career in flashbacks as she takes command of her first ship as a full-fledged captain, and then the whole arc will end with Suicide Solution, and Suicide will bow out of the series at that point. I'm not going to tell you how. Even if the climactic scene leaks, it's not over yet. So that last one's going through rewrites because last book of a series, an intended finale is really hard. But anyway, this is Royal Orders, and Royal Orders is Mitsuko's turn. And the title refers to Mitsuko's background. She is the grandniece of the previous king of Bonaparte, which is the Compact's only functioning monarchy. All the worlds of the Compact are independent within the Compact, and they have their own form of government. And some beta readers are going, "You're being too political." The same beta readers criticizing me, making Mars socialist and Belsham a libertarian paradise, and I'm like, what's your problem? These people have to do it somehow. And nobody cares how they do it as long as it works. And let me take care of a technical difficulty here. Oh, God, that's driving me nuts. Anyway, the joys of podcasting, and I'm doing this as close to live as possible. So anyway, Mitsuko comes from that background, but she had no interest in the royal court or anything like that, which actually made her great uncle kind of proud. And she trained with their planetary guard. They call the household guards, the 7 houses for which the throne rotates with each successive monarch, has their own household guard. And usually it's named for a famous special forces unit or division or battalion from their from their ancestral homeland. There is a Native American royal house. It was named for a family that is very prominent in one of the First Nations here in the United States. And both the members of the family still on Earth, and the members of the family on a rather heavily Native American colony don't like them. They're like, we spent 500 years putting all that behind us. Smallpox is gone. Smallpox is gone. We're part of the government now. We're able to integrate with the society. We're not just the colonized. We're on the same level. We're the colonized on the level with the colonizers. We even have our own core world. And one of you has to go to this, terraforming project and wear a crown. So anyway, that's a little sidetrack, but that's that family. There is also the Windsors and the Bourbons because, it's Europe and they like their kings and queens, and so they get two. The Windsors are actually not happy about this. So somebody in their family tree thought this was a good idea, and then we get to Edward, first of his name, who is now the king and is engaged in Mitsuko. And the reason being is they both, when they reached a certain age, joined the Compact Navy as special forces. And I didn't want to call them SEALs because, it's great to recycle some names. I think at one point I referred to the border guards, the Compact border guards, special forces of Spetsnaz, which is a Russian strike team. And that's well and good, but after a while it gets kind of old. So I just said, okay, they just call their special forces. They have shore patrol, everything else, or they'll use Marines or whatever. But for, going in and basically killing Space Bin Laden, that's what they use. Edward was very proud to serve in this. It was work that he found worthwhile. This is what he wanted. He felt he was born to do. He wasn't born to be a politician. And so when his turn on the throne comes, he asks Mitsuko to marry him because she grew up as a royal. She grew up near court, doesn't like court. There is a story that may or may not make it into print. It depends on whether I feel like rewriting it or not, but it takes place in that gap year between Suicide Run and Checkmate, where she even says there was like a ball, it was like a debutante ball, and she actually marched up to her great uncle, who was alive and the king at the time, and vowed right before him, I'm never marrying a royal. And Edward says, maybe you should reconsider. And I'm the king, I'm going to be king, I can absolve you of that. So before they get married, when they're engaged, Mitsuko is his chief of security. So that's where the story begins. The story is Edward is going around like a good constituent leader. Governors travel to different states, premiers to different provinces, and so on. However your nation governs its little individual units, that's his job. And he goes to Earth to address, the Compact Assembly, which is the legislative body that runs everything for humanity. And somebody tries to blow him up. Mitsuko gets to Earth, and Cyber Command, which is the intelligence wing of the military, pulls her aside and says it's these people called the Cubists. They're kind of referred to in earlier books and different books. One of them is they have a tendency to blow things up because they're pantheists. It's not murder. They're making you one with the one true God. So Mitsuko decides she's going to start by contacting the founder of this religion. And it turns out he's not even a full-time guru. He's not a violent man at all. He's actually horrified by what he's seeing. They call him Master Ansel. Not everybody calls him Master, but in fact, he's uncomfortable with the title. But he says there's a man named Kurtz on Aphrodite. To tell you what Aphrodite is, it's swampy Venus. And then there'll be a side trip in this story to Desert Mars, which is not so much desert, just kind of it looks like, it looks a little like Kim Stanley Robinson's, just better laid out than his. And that's actually how they find it. But not to get too far off track. Kurtz is, to put it mildly, an asshole. And Mitsuko is introduced to Master Ansel's brightest disciple. And she's not really a disciple. They just kind of parallel each other and they get along really well. It's Suicide, of all things. And if you read Checkmate, this is kind of where Suicide and JT parted ways for a while. Now, Winter Games, which is a novella you can get if you're on the newsletter, tshidle.com/newsletter. Sign up today. Anyway, so what JT does, or not JT, but what Mitsuko does is she travels with Suicide. Suicide's got a bad history with this guy. And if he's causing problems where one of her proteges, which happens to be Mitsuko, nearly loses her fiance, this is not, this is like, the dude sitting there going, this aggression, will not stand, man, So it's very undude-like. I mean, I based her originally on Michelle Yeoh, so yeah. They're going to go confront Kurtz and possibly take him down and bring him in. Kurtz has other plans. Kurtz is fomenting a revolution. He wants to make Aphrodite a Cubist world. His warped, twisted version of Cubism. And it does not go well. He digs up an ancient technology he wants to use against the Compact, and part of it is on Ares, the desert Mars. And Suicide arranges it so that Mitsuko can escape, but that makes her a captive. And that's where the story really kicks in, because then they get to Ares, and Admiral Burke, who is kind of like the den mother to anybody military in this story, intervenes. And she brings Davra, and she brings Duffy, and even loops Eric Iwano, who's not Navy, but he's Cyber Command, into this. Also, Edward gets wind that Suicide's been kidnapped and his fiance was almost killed. Commandeers a ship and brings, a unit of household guards, and most of them are familiar to Mitsuko. And using his position as a leader of a home world, a core world, elevates them to Navy Special Forces status and tells Mitsuko, you go back and get her. And so from that point on, it turns into basically Heart of Darkness, and that may or may not have had something to do with Kurtz. Kurtz may have told me to go, have him go up on a boat on a river and, just shoot things up. Go up on a river and get the crazy man. Doesn't quite go as expected. And that's Mitsuko. Mitsuko, she has, because she's a royal, she has a similar background to JT. Very privileged, very rich. And like JT, she doesn't like it. But JT was dumped unceremoniously on a farm that was trampled over by aliens. And then he's widowed. All before the age of 17. That tends to humble you. So you don't care if your mother is the female reincarnation of Warren Buffett. You want nothing to do with that life anymore, because you kind of have a vision of what's really real. You see people suffer, see people do it. He's like, screw this. I'm living on Amargosa. Now, Mitsuko is got a very strong sense of duty. Her uncle instilled it in her, the planetary guards. She's lived among soldiers all her adult life. So she's not as embittered by her background as JT is, but they become best friends. And this is where JT and Mitsuko really shine. That's one of the reasons she wants him at his side. And actually, he is there because of the falling out with Suicide. In Winter Games, one of the last scenes is Ellie Nardino telling, because she's the other person that stayed behind on Amargosa, and saying, you're going to go with me and you're going to make this right. And he's there to make it right. And we do revisit the sequence where they're trying to get Suicide back in a later novel from Davros' point of view. And Davros just kind of like going, sit down, you're acting like a little kid. So Mitsuko does not take crap. She is put in a very vulnerable position. I was a little hesitant to leave it as is, and then all the beta readers are like, damn, she's tough. Okay, I'm good. She will perform her first Section 11. If you followed the series from the beginning, Section 11 is gets its name from the section of the document, the compact, the so-called Constitution. It says nobody shall be put to death by the justice system unless they commit treason, which is a very bad thing in a spacefaring society. People will die. Or military abuse. Basically, no, you can't rape prisoners. You can't attack them for their supplies. You can't kick them out of their houses and take them over. And, you do all these things. That was a whole premise of the Amargosa trilogy where Lucius Gray had, shall we say, a very, very interesting Section 11 execution. Anyway, Mitsuko will do one. Hers is a little more mundane, but at the same time, a bit unexpected. Even when you see it coming, you're just like, so you did this. Okay, well, anyway. So that's Mitsuko in a nutshell. Probably one of my favorite characters to write because she just does not take crap off of anybody. She knows she's not all that in a bag of potato chips. She hates. Her big complaint is, my job is to sit and do the Windsor Wave. Like that, she doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to be queen. She wants to be princess consort. A princess consort can have a job. A queen cannot. A queen has to be either the leader or the arm dressing, the window dressing for the monarch. So, there you go. All right, and that went a little bit longer than I expected, but that is Mitsuko in a nutshell, and if you give me about 5-10 minutes, I shall do a reading for you. Very good. See you in 5.